Okay, so like I said, welcome. This is Sharing Your Engineering Story, and it will be presented by me, Skylar Brarin, as well as Vanessa Raponi.
Hello.
So who are we? We are the EIR program is part of Engineers of Tomorrow, which is a venture of Engineers Without Borders Canada. So pretty much what we do is we try and use outreach to get young students to think about engineering as a possible profession and all the fields of STEM, and just put a face to the profession and get them excited about the future and solving the world's problems using engineering. And we believe it's a great way to shape the future and also shape the public's perception of engineering to change the future. So this is our team. There's Erica, who's the venture lead, Rebecca, who's the operations manager, Vanessa's the program coordinator, and I'm a junior fellow or a summer intern. Then there's Sal, Alan, and Mark, who are our advisors, and then some alumni who have been very active in Engineers of Tomorrow are Jonathan Lazo, Shivangna, and Jonathan La Rochelle. So just to start off, I'll start with telling my engineering story so you kind of have an idea of what you're going to be learning how to do in this webinar. So I am going into my third year of chemical engineering at UNB, but this choice of mine to do engineering hasn't always been clear since childhood. My early perception of engineering was very stereotypical, and it turned me off from engineering right away because my father was actually an engineer, and he does a lot of land surveying and geomatics work. And when he would explain engineering to me, he would say something along the lines of, I plot boundary lines on maps, or I stand in fields with robots. And I'm sure that's really exciting to some people, but to me, that sounded really boring. And from very young age, I was like, I'm not going to be an engineer. Growing up, I also really had a passion for helping other people, and I really wanted to have some kind of career that would make a difference in the world, and I also didn't see engineering doing that whatsoever. But despite me saying I didn't want to go into engineering, I have very fond memories from a very young age, going into the bathroom and getting my mom's makeup and lotions and getting food coloring and making potions in my room. I'm sorry, Mom. But I just absolutely loved mixing things, and any kind of reaction I could make, I loved. And I also enjoyed a lot of other things that other kids would enjoy, like dance and soccer. They were very big parts of my life. So moving on to high school, the science and math theme stayed pretty relevant in my life. They were my favorite subjects in high school, and I also did things like going to science fair. And I remember at one science fair I went to, there was a demonstration done by two professors at the university, and they pretty much did all of these chemical reactions. And I was absolutely intrigued. I remember coming home from the science fair and telling my mom, I'm going to be a chemist when I grow up. Even though I didn't really know what a chemist was, I was so fascinated by chemical reactions and mixing. And I had some friends in high school who went into engineering, and when they started saying they were going into engineering, I started to consider it more as a career option for me. And I did really like the idea of having a career with financial stability and career security. So despite liking math and science so much in high school, my love for dance and soccer also was very prominent in my life. So I ended up actually going into kinesiology at the University of Alberta. And it only took me 2 weeks to figure out that this was not the degree for me. I absolutely hated anatomy, which was kind of the basis of kinesiology. But during that time, I took a wide variety of courses to just explore my options. And once again, I liked the math and physics and chemistry. So I talked to some of my female floor mates at the time who were in engineering, and they really told me about how broad it was and how many options there were once you go into engineering. They convinced me to switch. So I started school at the University of New Brunswick, and I decided I was going to major in chemical engineering. Now, my mindset towards engineering was less stereotypical, but I still really felt that I was going to have a mundane, repetitive job that I wouldn't like, but I just had to give up on the idea that I would change the world because it was unrealistic and a dream. But the longer I did chemical engineering and found other clubs such as Engineers Without Borders, I found that there was a place for engineers in everything from development to rocket science. Like there it's such a broad range of things, and engineering gives you such a good basis to go forward into so many different fields and not just necessarily stereotypical job. I also realized how much of an impact engineering can have on the world and how much it helps other people's life. And since having this realization of how impactful my job can be, I'm very excited and very happy that I'm still in engineering. So now to Vanessa's story.
Awesome. Thanks, Skylar. So hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa, and this is going to be me sharing my story. So when I was growing up, I was one of the only people in my family with even the concept of university on my radar. So I unfortunately didn't have anyone in my family to kind of prepare me for what engineering was or could be, or even really set it up as an option for me. All I just knew was that my mom always told me to take the maths and sciences in high school in order to keep my options open, not even really knowing what that meant. So I did that. I took the maths and sciences, and then grade 12 rolled around. And I was like, all right, well, I enjoy chemistry. I enjoy calculus. What does that really look like for me in the future? And it was when I met up with a friend of mine, Michael, who's in this picture to the left here. We were just meeting up for coffee one day, and he started talking about how he was in his first year of chemical engineering at U of T. So he walked me through a little bit about what the courses were like, what the community was like, the kind of the student culture side of things. And he really encouraged me to consider it. And just a week later, I was with a friend's dad at dinner time, and he was talking to me about how he worked at Bombardier Aerospace. And in the event I was interested in going into engineering, which he highly encouraged, that he could help me to get an internship there. So basically, within a week's time frame, I understood more about what it would look like from a student perspective and got a feel of how stable of a career choice the career could be. So I decided to go into engineering with the goal of going into chemical engineering. And I applied for McMaster, Queens, and Western because I grew up in Toronto and I wanted to be not too far away from home, but far enough away from home. I ended up choosing McMaster, and that friend's dad did come through, and I did get my first internship at Bombardier Aerospace. Over the years at McMaster is really big on co-op, so I worked at Bombardier first, then I went to France and worked at the Grenoble Institute of Technology doing research. And then after competing in a competition, I ended up working at Quaker in Peterborough for 4 months, and then at Pepsi in the manufacturing plant for 8 months in Vancouver. And throughout all these, technical experiences, kind of really getting a feel of what engineering in the workplace looked like, I started to become less sure that I would see myself as an engineer. I felt like I was excelling. I'm in the management program at McMaster, so I have a hefty business side to my degree. And I was starting to feel that I was more the kind of person to manage engineers or to kind of run an organization or more of the business elements of things, and becoming actually less confident in my technical abilities. And for no real purpose, I was doing perfectly well in all my engineering courses, never failed an engineering course, always was performing well at my jobs. It was more like a confidence thing, and I was feeling like I heard so frequently like, oh, you're so good at being social, or you're so good at business, but I rarely heard like you're technically competent. And it wasn't until two things really. Firstly, I worked at this job, Engineers of Tomorrow, both last summer and this summer, where I've been helping to run the EIR program. So, as you know, this PEO's Youth Outreach Program, I'm literally spending every day helping engineers all over Ontario get excited about encouraging kids to be excited about the profession. And all the things that come with that, going to these conferences about engineering, getting more integrated into the profession from a national standpoint. And I was sitting there one day realizing, like, you know, if I kind of was buying into our own messaging that really anyone can be an engineer and we really do need diversity, and that it's, I am capable. I've done the courses, I've been succeeding in them. I've done lots of stuff in the workplace, and why not me? I could do it. And it was also at my exit interview with Pepsi, I'd been in more of an operations role, and my boss had said to me, Vanessa, I think you actually need something a little bit more technical. So just having that kind of reinforcement from a boss that, a technical role would be suitable for me, and understanding more of the culture of engineering and just really, really enjoying it. I've basically decided goal number one when I graduate next year is to pursue my PEng. So that's my engineering story, and as of course it's just the beginning of my journey, but I'm really excited to see where it goes. So thanks so much for listening. Now we're gonna break down what we've just been doing there.
Okay, so the goal of engineering storytelling isn't necessarily to recruit young people to the profession. It's mostly just to make sure that they know engineering is an option for them. So many little kids, when you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They will rarely say engineer. Or if you ask them, what does an engineer do? They'll either give you a really stereotypical answer or not really know what it is at all. So the goal of the EIR program, as well as the goal of the storytelling, is to put a face to the profession, give them that human connection, and have them understand what engineering is. So when it comes time to choose a career or a path to go down, at least it's an option in their mind that engineering is a possible career. We also hope to break different challenges and stereotypes that are often interlinked with the engineering profession, like that engineering is only for boys, or engineering is boring, or you won't have a social life, by bringing someone to the classroom and showing them that engineers are actually, some of them, really fun people, and they have a social life, and it's fun and exciting. So that's kind of the goal of the storytelling that we do. So the benefits of telling your engineering story, the obvious answer is it's for others. Storytelling is a great way of sending a message, and students will retain a lot more information when presented in a storytelling kind of way than they are if you're just going to present them with a slideshow really quickly or bullet facts. But it's also for yourself. To be an effective storyteller, there's a lot of self-reflection that goes on, and you'll probably find you learn a lot of new things about yourself while you're trying to come up with your engineering story. And this new perspective is really valuable and fun, and you'll probably be able to almost connect the dots backwards. When I say that, I mean you'll think of things you did in your childhood that maybe showed that you were inclined to be an engineer that you hadn't previously realized, and things like that. So where can you use engineering storytelling? You can use it anything from your formal engineering outreach engagement, so that's anything from your engineering residence classroom visits to youth workshops to National Engineering Month events, to your own volunteer work outside of the EIR program. So if you teach soccer coaching or anything, it's also a great way to use your story to engage youth. And even in your own social networks and family circles, or practice with your coworkers or fellow students if you're still a student. So now we're going to go into some tips on how to build your engineering story and some prompts that will help start you off if you're a little bit stuck.
So first and foremost, of course, identifying yourself. So my name is Vanessa. I am a descriptor about yourself, something you're proud of. You can get into any range of details here when you're just describing yourself. For instance, in one youth outreach presentation I talk a little bit about my accomplishments, but then I relate back to the students by saying, I also am a huge Harry Potter fan, and I love doing fun exercises, and I'm really close with my family. So identifying yourself and connecting with your audience is really important.
Thinking about your past is also really important. So, like Vanessa said, bring up some things that you liked when you were your audience's age. So, if they're in middle school, maybe talk about how you're on the soccer team then, or you were really into singing and dancing or musicals, or anything that they can connect with to really show that you're not that different from them when you were their age. And that will reinforce the idea that engineering is really for anyone. It's not a us versus them mentality. It's an option for everyone.
Then look into the reasoning. So think really hard about why you chose engineering. And for most of us, it really was a journey. Skylar and I both got into the details of ours. And this is a really great reflection exercise. Think back about what brought you into the schooling and what helped you decide to continue to enter the profession and get your EIT and your PEng. Really delve into what the choice was and why. And even think back about things you maybe didn't know or realize at the time that now you realize, and share them where you feel comfortable doing so.
So another thing to do is share your fears or challenges. This is especially useful if you're with high school students or students who are a bit closer to picking their career path, because quite often at that age they'll be like, I'm really worried that engineering is going to be really hard and I'm going to fail out of it, or I'm really worried that I'm going to have no social life whatsoever, or that I'm not going to belong, or something like that. And these are really common fears among a lot of high school students, and most of us as engineers or engineering students probably also had a lot of these same fears when they were in high school. So if you express these fears and then just make sure you turn it into a positive and be like, but don't worry, it's okay, like you'll get over it. They're not as scary as you think. It's a really great way to connect with them and make them a little bit less worried or intimidated about engineering.
Next is this is a cool idea about talking about the change you want to see. So Skylar touched on a little bit about changing the world, and that's definitely something that I'm really passionate about too, that in retrospect I wish I had included more in my story, is talking about, why are you here? What is your ultimate goal? What is something you're passionate about? My partner, for instance, is super, super passionate about water, and they're really interested in going to, say, Indigenous communities and fixing water-related issues there. So that's the kind of thing that would be great to share, and is also a really clever way to help folks dream big and to engage students to understand that engineering is a lot more inclusive than just the stereotypes.
Another thing you can do is talk about some support. So this one is very specific to the school they're either at in high school or going to a university. So it's maybe not as relevant to the AR program, but it's still really interesting. So if you know a little bit about the school, tell them that the school will support them, and maybe point out some different resources they have on campus, like student writing centers or math help centers and things like that, where you can show that the school supports you and you're not just going through this journey alone, that it's going to be very different than high school, but at the same time there's going to be a lot of people going through it together, and the profs and teachers and TAs are all there to support you and help you get through it.
Another good idea, especially for those of you who are more advanced in your career, is to offer advice. And even those of you who are not advanced in your career, offering advice on, say, even applying to university, for instance, just offering advice in whatever your skill set and understanding is. So you could include something that you already added in your story, like reiterate something, or you can talk about something new and different that adds to everything. So again, remember your audience. You don't want to necessarily be like, when you're applying from middle management to upper management, this is some good advice. Like, think more about what is specifically going to help these students in more of a within their world, to help them understand that engineering could be a path for them.
So just a little tip on the prompts. So you don't necessarily need to use every single one of those prompts when you're telling your story, because that could be a very long story and you might not necessarily have a lot to say for each of the prompts, but I recommend taking a few of them and kind of linking them together with your story to make a story that way. Or you can just tell your story from childhood to where you got to where you are now if you already kind of have that idea and flow. The prompts are a really good way to help get you reflecting on the process though, and your childhood and your journey to become an engineer. So I definitely recommend you try to use a few of them. So now we're going to get into some storytelling tips. So like I said, really look into your past, because you don't always know what you're trying to find until you find it. Also, lead with your human story and not your credentials. The students aren't really going to care too much about where you are now, and the goal isn't to make yourself impressive, it's to make yourself really relatable and accessible to them. And it will also help break down stereotypes that are surrounding engineering, and it really reinforces the idea that anyone can be an engineer. Also, know your audience. So especially if you know what age your audience is going to be, talk about yourself when you were their age and use examples and language that they'll be able to relate to in that way. So a few do's and don'ts. Do tell your story with enthusiasm and emotion. Don't make it just a scripted presentation. Like, definitely rehearse your story a few times before telling it, but again, don't make it like a monotone presentation. You really want to give a genuine impression of yourself, and they'll relate to it a lot more in that way. So be descriptive, but also don't tell too many details or plot lines if they're not going to progress the story. But a few examples are definitely helpful, just to give a specific picture of their minds and get them to relate to that. And the other thing is, try and keep it short and sweet. From 3 to 5 minutes is ideal, so they can get the points of the story without maybe losing focus or interest. Also, when you're expressing what you do, don't necessarily say, I'm a chemical engineer. Really simplify it into something they'll understand, because most students won't understand that and it will mean nothing to them. Say, I create things like medications, food and drink, paper, clothes, through the application of chemistry, physics, math, and biology. That is something a lot of them can understand, and even though they probably won't know how any of that works, at least they'll have a better idea of what you do. So here are a few further resources if you're interested more in telling your engineering story. There's Telling Your Story, which is a webinar from National Engineering Month done by Erin Rogers, who goes into more of the tips and tricks of storytelling just in general. There's the Mock Radio Hour and some educational resources there. You can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter. And then Engineers of Tomorrow recently got a new YouTube channel, and we're going to be uploading this video as well as other recordings and webinars we've done in the past onto the channel. So we definitely recommend you check that out.
So does anyone have any questions about the concept of storytelling or anything we've brought up until this point? You can either respond in the chat box or unmute your microphone. An exercise that we encourage all of you to do at this point is to take a minute and kind of write down your engineering story. Think back and reflect on what happened to you in order for you to get to where you are today. And if you'd like, you can email it to myself or Skylar, and we can look it over for you and give you some comments and tips if you would like it. Or if you really want to go above and beyond, we're actually going to be recording some people's engineering stories and sharing them on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested, you are welcome to record yourself telling your engineering story and send us the video, and we will upload it to our YouTube page. So whatever you feel comfortable with, it's a good exercise for you to practice when sharing in front of the kids, and it's a good thing to think about. So we're not seeing any questions or anything, so we'll probably wrap up, but please feel free to reach out to us over email if you have any questions. And a reminder that we're all over social media. On Facebook, we have 2 accounts, one of Engineers of Tomorrow and another of the Engineering Residence Program. On Twitter, @EOTEWB is our very big account, and the @EIR program is also active. And if you're interested in some more community building, we have a LinkedIn Engineering Residence Program page where you're welcome to make comments and post on each other's content. So thank you so much, and we hope you enjoyed this and learned something new about your engineering story, and we look forward to connecting in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you.